Turn with me to the book of Exodus chapter 20, and I would like you to read verse 1 to 3. Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 to 3, and I want to extend my greetings to all the people who may be once again watching us online or who may be remote, not in the church, and those who are in the church. I greet you all. And I pray that today's service and this next service, everything will be a blessing in everyone's life. So I want to read Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 to 3 here. It says that, "Then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have other gods beside me. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." This morning, as we are in the presence of the Lord, and in this new year, the second week of this new year, we had a rough start to the year already. A lot of people were expecting 2020 to be behind and 2021 to be something which will be better. But in general, we didn't have a good start in many ways. At least for many people, it was not a good start. But our hope is in the Lord. And I want to remind what was shared during the New Year service, Psalms 48 verses 14, which says, "For God is our refuge, or God is for us forever and ever. He will be our guide even to the end." So as long as we are able to see our trust in God, I will tell you that we should not be shaking, even as we see the world around us shaking all the time. This morning I'm going to start a new series in the English service. This is a series on the Ten Commandments. And this morning I'm going to basically talk about the fact about your true God. And that's what we see here. But before that, about the Ten Commandments, it is said it is like a operator's manual from the factory we normally receive. Whenever we buy some products, we get what we call as operator's manual. It has got instructions how to start it. It has got instructions how to do the maintenance. It has got instruction if something goes wrong while you use it, what you should do. And depending upon what it is, there are instruction manuals which have different instructions. And we all understand that these instructions are very fundamental to the proper operation and maintenance and functioning of any product we buy. And regarding the Ten Commandments, we understand from the Bible that this is not given by somebody else. God himself spoke. He wrote it with his own fingers. And somebody said like this, the reason why the Ten Commandments are short and clear is that they were handed down direct, not through several committees. It was not handed over to us by several committees who revised it or thought about it and made all these things, but it was directly given. That's why it is short and it is pretty clear. And we see a world where there is a lot of brokenness. And if you really look into this, a lot of this brokenness have to do with the fundamental brokenness we see around. And it has to do with the fact that people have forgotten or they are violating God's law. Albert Einstein was the scientist who brought the theory of relativism, and he wanted it to be used for physics. But what has happened is today that theory has spread out into different arenas, different spheres of life. And people have started using ethics. In his own words, he had said that theory of relativism is good for physics and not for ethics. But we are living in a time where there is no absolute. People think that there is no absolute and they are all going after relatives. And when it comes to moral laws, and they are thinking in the same way. We see families being broken because people are violating the fundamental command of God regarding how families should operate. We see unsafe neighborhood because some of these violations are happening when God clearly told that you should not steal, you should not commit murder, you should not do these things. And we see that a lot of times places which are considered as safe are no more safe in many ways. Places where 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people, or even 15 years ago, kids could play out safely. Nowadays, a lot of people are afraid that whether they are safe places. People get nervous when somebody doesn't come home at the expected time. There are so many things happening around us. A lot of relationships are broken because people violate this simple command of do not lie. It's not a simple command, it's a very serious command, but I will get to that. So we are seeing a lot of brokenness around us. So the question is, how do we tackle this? How do we come back? So what I want to do is, we are going to look at the commandments, and today I'm going to focus on the first command. And we are going to look into that. But before that, I want to just take you through the atmosphere or the environment in which these commandments were given. When you come to the book of Exodus chapter 19, and when you read from verses 18 to 20, I want everybody to look into your own Bibles and read this. It says, Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because the Lord came down on it in fire. Its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. So this was not an unusual, this was not an ordinary scene. This was not like a service, like it was not like, something random where God came and nobody noticed it. No, it was a fearful, frightening atmosphere. It was exciting in many ways. If you think about what happened in the life of Israelites before this, you will realize that they were under the yoke of slavery for many years. And God rescued them out of Egypt, where they were going through a lot of oppression and a lot of problems. They were going through this trouble in Egypt. And because the time has come for them to be rescued, God sent his servant, Moses. And it was not a simple thing like Moses went and said, hey, come out, let's all go out of this place to the promised land which God promised your forefathers. It was not like that. First of all, he had to convince Israelites that the time has come for us to go. Then he had to convince the Egyptian Pharaoh and all the people over there. And we all know about the story of 10 plagues, one after another. They came every time. They thought we will get deliverance this time. But, after it was all over, the king won't allow them to go out. Then finally they came out. They ran out of food, in the sense like they wanted to eat meat. God gave them manna. God gave them meat to eat. And then what happens is, as time goes by, within a span of like a short period of time, they were seeing miracles one after the other. They saw the Red Sea departing in front of them because the enemy was behind them and they didn't have a way to go ahead. And God, did a wonderful thing, and they crossed the Red Sea, and then the enemies were all swept away in the same sea through which they passed by. So they had experienced a lot of mighty works of God, and now they have come to the Mount Sinai, where God came down to speak to his people and gave them some commands. This was a nation who didn't have any laws at that time. They didn't have moral laws. They didn't have any civil laws to govern. So what you see in the book of Exodus, starting with the 10 commandments, going up to Leviticus, is that God gave them different commands, which I'm going to talk about here in a short while. But you have to understand the atmosphere in which they are talking, or what is happening here. It's pretty exciting, but at the same time it's frightening, because it says that the mountain was shaking. If you look at that, it says that when Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, they stood at the foot of the mountain. They were standing at the foot of the mountain, and Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke. Can you imagine that? Because the Lord came down on it in fire. Its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. Sometimes we read this passage and we just move on. We think about 10 commandments, we move on. But just imagine what's happening here. One mountain is shaking. It's like fire upon that mountain. Smoke went up like smoke from a furnace. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke and God answered him in a thunder. It is not an ordinary scene. It is not a scene. I don't know how many of us will see this and will not be terrified. I would be terrified if I was in that place. And the next verse says, then the Lord came down on Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain. Then the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain and he went up. The Lord directed Moses, go down and warn the people not to break through to see the Lord, otherwise many of them will die. Even the priests who come near the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out in anger against them. This gives us a revelation or a little bit idea about who our God is. It says that if people come up to see me, what is going to happen? They will die. It says that even priests, if they come up to see me without consecrating themselves, my anger will burn against them. And the Moses is now responding to the Lord saying, the people cannot come up Mount Sinai, since you want us, put a boundary around the mountain and consecrate it. And the Lord said, go down and come back with Aaron, but the priests and the people must not break through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out in anger against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Then the Lord spoke all these words. So these 10 commandments were given in an atmosphere which is not ordinary circumstances. Then, it is not only the 10 commandments, it's Moses receives additional laws, and throughout the next few chapters you will see it. But let's focus on the 10 commandments as we study this series, and today we are going to focus on the first command. So here what is happening is there are 3 types of laws we can see in the Bible, at least when you look in relation to the Israelites. Number 1, they are the civil laws. Civil laws governed how the civil society would function, how people would function. Do you realize that the Israel kingdom, which was established under the theocracy or under the rulership of God, not under any parliament, democracy, or any of the governments, they didn't have prisons. They didn't have prisons. What they had was cities of refuge where people can run, because the punishment was shifted and action was taken very immediately. And it continued for a long time, as long as that nation existed as a nation, until around AD 70, when it was completely abolished, when Romans completely destroyed Israelites. So it ceased to exist after that in practice, at least to a large extent, the civil laws which governed how things should be. Then God gave them ceremonial laws. And ceremonial laws had to do with consecration. What do you do when somebody commits a sin, a crime? What the offering, sacrifices have to be, all those things were given by God. But we know that's where, when you read the book of Hebrews, you have to think that a lot of it had to do with the ceremonial laws, where we know that Jesus Christ came and he took care of it. That's why it says that no more sacrifice is left for what? For the sin. Because Jesus Christ died on the cross once and forever, in the sense like anyone who trusts, he came down, he became the sacrifice, and a sacrifice without blemish, holy, pure, and he died on the cross. That's why today we don't have ceremonial laws. And I don't have any problem in saying this again. If we were living under those terms, every one of you would have bought something with you today morning. What you'd have bought to the church today morning or to the assembly this morning is, some may have bought a small animal and all those things. And we would be doing a lot of sacrifices here. And each person will have to do. And you will have to cut it. In some cases, an individual who brings a sacrifice will have to do the sacrifice, bring the things to the priest. There have been a lot of things you have to do. But those ceremonial laws doesn't exist anymore in that sense, because of what Christ has done for us. Then there is a third category of laws which are called as the moral laws. which represents God's moral character, and it does not change because our God is unchanging. He doesn't change. If something was considered as unholy and unacceptable to God 3,500 years ago, or 4,000 years ago, or 6,000 years ago, it is still wrong and sinful to God today also. What does it mean? What was sin in the eyes of God centuries ago, it has not changed in the eyes of God today. What has changed is we have got a better way to access to the forgiveness which is provided to us. We have got a better way to reach out to God in our fallen state compared to what used to happen before 2,000 years, before Jesus Christ came into this world. So his moral laws actually teaches us what is the character of God, who is our God. They represent God's moral character and they do not change. They do not change. This morning, when we are studying and when we are understanding the scriptures, we have to understand one thing. I keep this, I don't know how many times I've repeated this. When we read the Bible, one of the things we are doing is we are trying to understand who our God is. A lot of times people read the Bible to understand what benefit we can get out of it. Sometimes people read the Bible to see, okay, what blessing is there in the Bible. Sometimes people get upset if they don't get a word of blessing. I'm not trying to say that word of blessings are not there. Absolutely, word of blessings are there and we need the word of blessings and we give the word of blessings. Benediction is a word of blessing we do after every service. I'm not trying to say that that's not needed, but what I'm trying to say here is that when we read the Bible, one of our objectives should be to know the author, who our God is, to understand his character, because then our life will become much better when we understand who our Father in heaven is really like. Now, when it comes to these teachings, I want you to take your attention to Matthew chapter 5 for a few minutes here, and I want you to read what Jesus told about the law himself. When you read from verses 17 onwards, it says, "Don't think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or one stroke of a letter will pass away from the law until all things are accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven." What did Jesus say? He says, "I did not come to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until the heaven and the earth pass away," what is not going to happen? Nothing is going to pass. And Jesus gives a further warning, which is of serious nature. He says, if anybody breaks one of the least of these commands, if anybody breaks one of the least of these commands, what is going to happen? And also teaches others to do same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So there is no way Jesus said, okay, now in the New Testament age, these commands, laws are going to be of lesser grade. God never said that. Jesus never said that. And then Jesus says something which is of way more importance and something for us to consider. I tell you, unless your righteousness passes that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never get into the kingdom of heaven. You are never going to get into the kingdom of heaven unless your righteousness passes that of the scribes and the Pharisees. That is the reason sometimes it's good to understand what Pharisees and scribes used to do. That's why I say sometimes it's important for us to don't ignore them and shut them out as hypocrites and just go around and, think that they were hypocrites, we are better than them. Because Jesus himself said, your righteousness have to surpass. Not like your habits, your attitudes have to be matching with what they do. Jesus never said follow them. Jesus said your righteousness have to surpass them. What does it mean? There are a lot of implications to that. They used to give tithe. They used to do a lot of things. Whatever righteous acts, I'm not going to get into that because otherwise it will take a long time. But when you read about something which Pharisees and Sadducees or scribes did, we can't simply ignore it and say, okay, that doesn't apply. They were like, bad people. But we have to really think, okay, how is my life? Am I doing something better or better than them? In the sense God wants us to be. So Jesus responded to the laws. Now let's get to the first command. What was the first command? There was a place where I think it was in a seminary I read somewhere, like there was a seminary or somewhere, students got given an assignment. And if I had more time today, I would like to give you that. But I don't have, so I'm not going to give you that. So they said, rate the 10 commandments in the order of importance. Rate the 10 commandments in the order of importance. And so they, did some discussion, debate. Did you know which command came number 1, the top of their list? Which command came at the top of their list? Anybody can make a guess? If you read the story, don't say, but if you have not read the story, out of the 10 commandments, which commandment came top of the list when some people sat down to rank them as most important? What? Do not murder. Wow. Jose Uncle needs to be in that seminary. That was a number 1 command which came up. Because when they looked at the gravity of things, if you steal it, murder versus stealing, what is more problematic in our human mind? Okay, now let me throw this at everyone. Giving the first priority to God, or do not have other gods besides me, and murder, which is more important? Which is more important? So today, if somebody goes and does something else, well, no consequences can be immediately seen. But if somebody does stealing like of a good magnitude, they can be caught. Murder, sure, they can be caught, right? But when you read Matthew chapter 22, we have read it so many times, and that's the reason the first answer came. When it comes to Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 to 38, what does it teach us? And I'm going to read that verse for everyone. And it says, what are the primary commands? When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked the question to test him, "Teacher, which command in the law is the greatest?" So the test I asked you a few minutes ago about how would you rate it, same thing they asked to Jesus. Which one is the greatest, or which one is the number 1 priority? And our Lord said, what was the response of Jesus? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the most important command. So there is no need of any debate here. There is no need of discussion. There is no need of going around and applying our own wisdom. I am so glad that Jesus addressed this here, and I am so glad that the Pharisees came and asked Jesus this question, and I am glad that Pharisees actually had the audacity to ask Jesus, and I'm so glad that Jesus did not dodge this question. He gave a straight answer, not once, like more than once Jesus have given the same answer. I'm so glad that the gospel writers were inspired by the Holy Spirit to record these words of Jesus. Otherwise, I'm sure today there would be books written about which is the greatest command, and one book will say, do not murder. Somebody else will say, based on what they are thinking, what their perspectives are, people would have dissected and completely destroyed all these things. But here, Jesus is very plainly saying that the greatest and the most important command, I like that word, the greatest and the most important command is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, which is coming from one of the first commandments written over there. So what does it say? It says that you should not have No, you should have no other gods beside me. But before that, God tells them something, okay? Listen very carefully. The Lord said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, or the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. So God says, I am. I am. There are many religions who believe in polytheistic views about God. They think there are many gods. There are pantheistic views. There are many isms out there. There are many New Age religions. There are many things. But the God of the Bible says, I am the Lord. I am the Lord. Number two, God said, I am the Lord your God. That means this God is a personal God. What does it mean? It means that you have a God who is your personal. You can have a personal relationship with this God. And we understand, I'm sure all of you understand that through Jesus, God made us his own children. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that who believes in him shall not perish but have an everlasting life. As many of them believed him, he gave them the right to become his children. So we have been made the children. We have become the child of God. So this God, he is one God and he is the true God. And the uniqueness is, he says, the God says, I am your God. You will not have many gods. You cannot go after many things in this world as the other nations. But I am your God who brought you out. I am your maker. I am your creator. Through the prophets, God, when he was speaking to Israelites, many times God has said, I am your creator. I am the one who made you. I am the one who took you out. People of God, this morning, number one, we have to remember our privilege that we belong to him. We belong to him. He called us not with mediators in the middle. Yes, there was a time in history where in order to go to God, you needed mediators. In order to have access to God, you needed mediators. But this morning when you woke up, what did you do? Did you call anybody and ask them to pray for you so that they can actually pray on behalf of you? Yes, we all need each other's prayer support and all those things. That's absolutely helpful, and we all know that there is a place for that in the Bible. But at the same time, in the morning when you woke up, you said, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Right? Sometimes people struggle with prayer. They don't know what to pray. I tell you, it's a good thing to do the Lord's Prayer. If nothing, if you get up in the morning and if you do the Lord's Prayer, I tell you, theologically, theoretically, practically, in every sense, you will be correct. You know why? Because the model prayer which Jesus gave starts with the saying, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Then it gets into our needs also, says, give us today our daily bread. And it gets into the fact of forgiveness also. Forgive us. And it gets into the fact that we also have to forgive others. Such a beautiful prayer. But it talks about the glory of God. It talks about the fact that our Father in heaven is a relatable, he's somebody who doesn't require, our money. He doesn't require a lot of things from us. He requires us, he needs us. He says, I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God. Then God says, you shall not have, or you do not have other gods before me. Do not have other gods before me. You should not have other gods before me. In other words, you shall have no other gods before me. What does this mean? I am your God. I am the one who redeemed you. I am the one who saved you. I am the one who brought you out of the slavery. I am the one who redeemed you. If God was giving us the commands today, what would God say? God would say, I am the God who brought you out from the slavery of sin. I am the one who brought you out from that penalty of sin which was upon your head. I gave my son Jesus. Like God spoke to Israelites and said, I am the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the land of the place of slavery. God would say, I am the one who gave my son Jesus and brought you out from eternal condemnation, eternal punishment which was awaiting you. I brought you out of that place. I brought you into a place. I gave you the privilege to know me. I chose you. I have seen you. And I am your God. And what I want from you is that you should not have any other gods before me. No man-made gods, no personalities in this world, no humans, no individuals. Your worship should belong to me. Your devotion and reverence should belong to me. Sometimes people are so influenced by other people. Sometimes it could be political leaders, sometimes it could be people from different arena, different places. And sometimes they know more about those people than they know about God and about Jesus. You ask them, where was Jesus born? They don't know. You ask them, where was this football player or cricket player was born? They will tell you the hospital and maybe the doctor who took the delivery. But you ask them, where was Jesus born? You ask them, what are the 7 things Jesus said? What did Jesus said during the passion, time? What did Jesus said here, or what did Jesus said? You ask them, what did Jesus tell to Jairus? Or you ask them, what did Jesus tell what was the last words of Jesus before he left? Well, no. But if you ask them, what did this person tell in the interview, which was given in 1998, after they won the World Cup? I don't know who won the World Cup, I'm just making it up. They will tell you the exact words. Why? What is the reason for that? Or you ask them, what did this person tell this time or that time, right? But a lot of times they don't remember what Jesus said or what God has asked us. Indirectly or knowingly or unknowingly, what this means is our devotion is actually going away from God to something else. You shall have no other gods before me. Dear people of God, knowing God or not knowing God, or whether we are truthful in our devotion to God, is not determined based on some activities we do or some of the things we, basically, if you come to the church or if you attend the church, that's not a sign. But whether we are truly following God, and if God is our God, it is reflected by our own lifestyle. And I will tell you, the best person to know that is we ourselves. It's you yourself, right? I am the best person to judge and see whether if I have other gods before me, apart from the God who called me. So this morning the challenge, I'm going to conclude here very quickly. The first command says, you shall have no other gods before me. What does it mean? There should not be any game, there should not be anything which supersedes the priority which needs to be given to God. Many times people say they are very busy, right? They are very busy. And I think I have told you this thing. Now I no more say I'm busy. Not because of anything else. Actually, I'm not busy. Yeah, there are a lot of things to be done, but that will all be done. No worries. And it will only be done until you're alive, right? Sometimes we do things as if we are going to be here for like forever. The only place where we'll be forever is eternity, right? We all know that. It's a simple thing, right? Here we are only for a short period of time. And now with the availability of media and live streaming and all, every other day when I actually open my phone, there will be a funeral service popping up, right? I don't know about you, but the YouTube, they will pop up. Sometimes you subscribe to some, or you saw some video, some convention or something, and every time you open the funeral service of this person. So sometimes, knowingly or unknowingly you click, and there is a lot of songs of hope going, and there is this dead body lying and people sitting around, and we have become so familiar with all those things now that we all know very clearly that one day we are going to go one day. But there is a place which is going to be permanent, that is our eternity. And that's the reason why I would tell you, we should not be busy in this world. We should not be busy in this world to an extent. See, busyness is in style, is in fashion now. Because stimulation and this need for doing something all the time is what this culture has conditioned us to be. Like everybody wants more productivity, more things, more things, more things. We don't use what they call as the power of silence. What do you mean by the power of silence? You know, taking it like a 10 minutes pause without doing anything. Just, I'm sure many people, if you do this experiment, many people will struggle to survive 10 minutes without saying anything. Sometimes I will tell you, if your kids are of the age where they can understand and they can explain to them and ask them to sit still and quiet for like 5 to 10 minutes, just calmly. Teach them that practice. Because everything else is asking them and making them stimulated, right? They want to be, the games, everything is stimulating, all the time. That's what we see all the time. But as a Christian, I want to tell you, we need to have those moments where reflect upon God and we give Him the priority. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. But the command is very simple. God said the first number one command is, you do not have other gods besides me. Gods have come in many forms throughout the centuries. Gods have come in many forms throughout the centuries. Long time ago, people made idols. When something happened, they thought that was a god. Even, long time ago. Some people started worshipping the sun. Some people started worshipping the rain because they understood that without rain, they cannot get crops. Rain was needed. So they started worshipping that. Some people understood the importance of sun and moon and everything. They started worshipping different things. As different came, they started worshipping. What did they do when we say they started worshipping? Let me make it clear. When we say they started worshipping, they started giving devotion, more time and energy and everything towards that. And they used to do some sort of, ceremony or whatever. It ended up in ceremony, but they have a big devotion. And we all know today, for some people, animals are God and many things are there. But one of the gods of today's age is also this technology and a lot of things which are going around us. We have to make sure that we don't become worshippers of something which is, we don't realize it. It may not be like the idol, but I will tell you, it is more powerful than a simple idol, which has no power, as the Bible says. No, they have hands, but they cannot reach. They have eyes, they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. A simple idol, which you see, it basically cannot do anything. But some of the other idols, which have come in the new form, I would call this as new technology age gods, demigods or gods which have come out. You may not think in that way, but think in the perspective I'm saying this. They have more power to control you. They have more power to manipulate you. They have the power to dictate you. They have the power to, make you do things. They have the power to capture you. An idol which doesn't have anything, they cannot capture you. They cannot do much to you. They will simply be, there to, it will be there and you go and do whatever you want to do and you go from there. They don't have any other power. But some of the new generation, I would say this generation, other things which have manifested itself, they have the power to cripple. It has the power to squeeze you. It has the power to squeeze things out of you. It has a lot of power if you are not careful. Remember, you should have no other gods before me. Before I conclude, I want you to take your attention to this book of 2 Kings, chapter 17. 2 Kings, chapter 17, and verses 7. It says like this: this disaster happened because the people of Israel sinned against the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and because they worshipped other gods. And verse 18 says like this: therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel, and He removed them from His presence. Only the tribe of Judah remained. Why did the disaster come upon Israel? Why did Israel fell? Because it clearly says the people of Israel sinned against the Lord, their God, who brought them out. Why? How? Because they worshipped other gods. They lived according to the custom of the nations that the Lord had disposed before the Israelites. And then it says in verse 18, they abandoned Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and he removed them from his presence. Only the tribe of Judah remained. What a tragedy. Look at the time when they were on the Mount Sinai to this time, which is mentioned in the 2 Kings chapter where we read. God gave them the command, but they got failed. What does the 10 Commandments do to us? It will lead us, if we take it seriously, to lead a practical holy life. Not a theoretical holy life, but a practical holy life. It will lead us into leading a life of practical holiness. If we ignore, we will be broken. As I said, some examples in the beginning of this message. Families are broken. Relationships are broken. Places are no more safe. Because humanity in general have decided not to follow what the Creator has given to us. When God put those things in place, He understood that we will be dysfunctional without it. And that's exactly what we are seeing today. See, anyone whose life is broken, it can be fixed by the Creator alone. Only our Creator can fix it. They have to believe in Jesus. They have to believe in Jesus. Whatever dialogue may take place, whatever discussions may take place, whatever reconditioning of the mind may take place, because of the inbuilt nature of sinfulness which is existing in humans, it is not going to work out the way we think it will work out. Whatever control people may want to do, communism failed, many other theories. There were a lot of theories. I'm not going to get into those today. I don't have the time, but everything has failed. But those who have experienced the love of Christ and the love of God can testify that God has not failed. And that's the reason why we are here today this morning. In a broken world, what is our hope? Hope for us is we should learn and we should follow. And as far as possible, we should communicate it. This brokenness cannot be fixed by anything else. It can only be fixed by the power of the gospel. When I say power of the gospel is the message of Jesus. Only God can bring healing and deliverance in the midst of all the chaos and all the things we are seeing. Let's close our eyes. I will request the worship team to come forward. We're going to spend a few moments here in singing a few songs. I want everybody to stand up.